Disclaimer. Today's podcast will be discussing themes around death, coping with loss, losing loved ones, especially children. And I urge that viewer discretion is advised, but I also encourage you to watch this because a lot of us will one day have to deal with this. How do we cope with this? How do we make sense of it? These are the things that we're going to be asking today. And we're going to be doing that by speaking to the parents of a very courageous and inspiring young girl. 9 years and 3/4 was her age. Her name is Zaina Layali de Grouf. And we mentioned 9 years and 3/4 because she was actually a Harry Potter fan, so 3/4 is quite an insightful age to have for her. What happened? We're going to quickly discuss that now. She was born in Belgium, and she also had a younger sibling, a sister. And 3 years later, they moved to Canada in 2019. Now, it's interesting to know about Zaina is that she was very self-proficient. She taught herself how to draw, how to craft, how to ride a bike, and even how to swim. Very bright and intelligent young girl. And in 2023, she joined the School of Magic. It was all a very magical moment. Her love for Harry Potter and her ability to be able to use her skills in a school which was actually a forest school, an outdoor school. It was a very, very exciting day for her indeed. And of course also for her parents. And the day turned out to be no short of any excitement that she had. It was a wonderful day that she had at school. And as soon as her mother came to collect her, she told them that this day was the best day of her life. Your first day at school, of course. But as her parents will also tell us later in the podcast, this would turn out to be the worst day of their lives. Now, Zaina had asthma, but due to different allergies that she had through the course of her childhood age, and these had slowly but surely increased and amassed as she began her first day of school. And when she came back home from school, of course, just like any other child, she was very hungry. And her mother gave her some snacks, some food. And within that, there was something. 3 pine nuts. And her parents tell us that they could never have thought that 3 simple pine nuts would be something that would later be the cause of taking her life. It's not something that she had for the first time. She'd had it before as well. And she was fine. So they thought that this would be okay. But sometimes things can be unpredictable. But of course her parents were trained and they were very, very skilled in how to deal with these situations. Being very proficient, her mother and father immediately realized that she may have some symptoms of an allergic reaction or an asthmatic attack. So they stayed with her and they gave her, and they had to give her antihistamines, her inhaler, and when things got progressively worse, they had to use, for the first time, an EpiPen. Of course, they resorted to calling the emergency services, who got there very quickly and actually went above and beyond to cordon off traffic and get Zaina to the hospital. But as was Allah's decree that day, she passed away 3 days later, and she was pronounced brain dead, and according to the doctors, this was due to anaphylaxis and an asthmatic attack. Now, this is not the end of her story. She actually, in her passing, was able to save the lives of many people. And as her parents will tell us in the podcast, this was what she was meant to do. In her passing, the doctors offered her parents the option for her organs to be donated to different people who definitely needed them in order to survive. By the grace of Allah, she was able to donate her heart, pancreas, both kidneys, liver, and her eyes to people who dearly needed them. This included a 10-year-old girl, an 11-year-old boy, a 27-year-old man, and a 67-year-old man. Alhamdulillah. Now, we will speak to her parents. How did they cope with her loss? How do they cope with it now? These are very important questions that we must all be ready to answer, whether it's when we're talking about our own death or the death of those who we love.
So I think all of these signs have shown me that she is exactly where she needed to be. I, as her mother, I'm like, yes, she came through me, but I'm just a custodian of her, and she was never mine. And it's really hard to detach yourself, because you love your children and you expect things of them and you raise them up to be things, but it's not until something happens that you can then open your mind and be like, oh. And I just want to just tell, like, giving the perspective that she was where she needed to be. When we did her funeral prayers, it was at Beit al-Hamd in Mississauga. It's in an old school. I didn't really want her funeral to be at this masjid in particular. I wanted it to be at Beit al-Islam, which is our major masjid in Toronto, with a minaret, and it's very beautiful, and it's a real mosque. It's not a school building. So anyway, on the morning of the funeral, I had a bit of a face on, and he was like, what's wrong? And I was like, I don't really want it to be here. And he was like, nothing I can do about it now. There was like logistical things with the washing of all of the funeral services, the washing of the body, the janazah prayers were all at this mosque. And so anyway, we did the funeral, and shortly after Zaina's burial, I think Ramadan started 2 or 3 days after she was buried. And there's, Imam Suleiman, he does a Ramadan series every year. And last year, his series was called the Jannah series. And someone sent me the first episode, and I was like, I don't want to listen to this. It was on what happens to children when they die. And I forwarded it onto my family group. I was like, if anyone wants to listen to this, go ahead. And then my brother came back about 20 minutes later, and he was like, oh, that was really interesting, and this and this and this. And I really thought it was great that he said when children die, they go to Beit al-Hamd. And I was just like, what? It was so, like, I don't know. I just kind of looked up and I was like, okay, God, I'm listening. It was just one of those moments where you're like, okay, she was exactly where she needed to be, despite my ego and my wanting to, like, have it somewhere else. And she was exactly where she needed to be. So I think...
so Beit al-Hamd was the name of that mosque, which you initially didn't want to have the burial in.
Beit al-Hamd actually translates into house of praise. So it was just really divine. And I had to be like, okay, God, I'm listening to your plan. It's hard, but we're here. And I think, again, in the Quran, it says, surely with hardship comes ease. And it says it not once, but it says it twice. Surely with hardship comes ease. With hardship comes ease. And so I think trying to find that ease in this, like, difficult time is something that we're both trying and navigating.
Yeah, I think interestingly in that verse it says with hardship comes ease, not after hardship comes ease, right? It's with the hardship that you'll find the ease. So you have to go through it to receive the blessing, right? And so for me as well, I mean, aside from the fact that I'm a very practical person, I don't know if that's my European upbringing. So obviously when someone passed away and you can help people with organs which are going to serve no one if you put them into the ground, that's a logical choice. But as a Muslim as well, I mean, in the Quran, there's multiple times when we are told by Allah that your children are but a trial for you, right? Or your children won't be of any help on the day of judgment, right? They're not to be regarded as your possession, right? Even though people feel like, oh, they're my children. Like, yes, you're responsible for their upbringing. You're the reason they're you're part of the reason why they came into this world, but you can't cling on to them, right? That's not what they're here for.
I mean, with your kind of perspective, what we have is basically we invalidate the entire question, because when we say that we start blaming God for taking someone away, well, that was technically never the case with you guys or with a Muslim. That we acknowledge the fact, and if we haven't acknowledged, we should start acknowledging the fact that the people around us, they belong to Allah, and actually so do we. And so our lives are in control of Allah as well.
And then we have that promise as well that your children will, be an intercessor for you on the day of judgment. And what better person do we have than our own beloved to call us to the gates too, inshallah. Hopefully we don't mess it up with the rest of our lives, but we have this, you have that promise. And I think I can't even imagine what our life would be like if we didn't have this faith and this guidance that we have of like this life being temporary, the akhirah, being the ultimate home. And the way that Jannah is described in various texts and various hadiths, I just think she's having an amazing time up there. And if I'm honest, I'm a little bit jealous, and I can't wait to meet her in the hereafter, inshallah. But going back to that piece of, we say it as Muslims, surely to Allah we belong and surely to Him do we return. And we also say that everything is divine decree and everything is written. But what we found with our family and friends and people would be that when they came to give us condolences, they would say this, and then they would call Zaina's death a tragedy, or they would call it an untimely death. And it really got to us because, one, if you believe in the will of Allah, then nothing is untimely. It's sad that person is no longer physically with you. But it's not untimely. It's in God's time. And then,
I mean, I was kind of coming to this point, actually. And these are two questions which I've stored. You don't have to answer them, by the way. But I'm probably going to ask them because I think they need to be asked. But before I do, I think also should want to highlight the fact that you've been talking about, the Quran saying that surely your wealth and your children are but a trial for you. And that mindset is also so important for a Muslim, beyond the fact that, you're saying that, yes, Allah is their creator and everything, but this is also a test. And therefore, I think by the looks of what you're saying, you're also finding strength in that as well, because this is actually a trial and a challenge. And with that, also, inshallah, comes a reward, comes something from Allah Himself. But my question is that you've been talking about this, and I was going to ask you as well, what are some of the things people say which are not helpful? But you've already answered that. And that is basically this. That people... well, there must be more. But this is one of the most important ones. Because when you say wholeheartedly as a Muslim, that and it's not just you. Everyone says this, right? No matter who we've lost. That they've gone to Allah. And that is the thing that we declare as Muslims. And we are happy about that because who better to go to than Allah, who is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, right? And all the promises that we find in the Quran about paradise. And all of, in the hadith it says, make for him Baytul Hamd, or for her, right? And all of these things. I think I already know what you're going to say. Because this question can either be answered from a perspective of what do I want? Or from a perspective of what would be good for them. But if you today had the opportunity to bring her back, would you?
I don't think there's any, for me, again, I can't speak for Nils, there's no reality where she should remain here. That is our ultimate, we as Muslims, we strive for the akhirah, that's our forever home, and she's already there. And like I said, it hurts to not have her in the physical sense where you can hug and hold her, but she doesn't suffer anymore. She doesn't have any reaction. She's free to eat whatever she wants. She can do all the things that her heart desires without any hurt, without any pain, without any suffering. And I see the state of the world and I would not bring her back for anything. In fact, I wish I was there with her. And even Ziva, we tried to instill this Islamic perspective on her, and she says to us these really deep and profound things like, Mama, I think Allah called Zaina to him so she could welcome all the children from Gaza. And those to have her thinking about Jannah and the hereafter as well is so beautiful, and it's hard to see her live through this, but it's also really amazing to see her like know that there's something afterwards and that we have something to look forward to, and this is not the end.
That is, I mean, one thing that you said is that you would rather go to her. I never thought about the answer, by the way. But yeah, I think the way that you guys are thinking, not because like I said, it's one thing to say these things or say it in theory, but this is something that you guys are living, and you're still standing on that, and that's whether it's you, and I think this is something that you mentioned, Gaza, people, they're losing their children, and the world is just perplexed, and they're just confused, and they don't understand. How on earth are these people able to find this kind of perspective? And
I feel like we're nothing compared to them. Like, I feel like our faith is nothing compared to them. Yes, we lost a child, but we lost her in, she had the best healthcare. She was safe. She, machines were not shut off on her. She didn't have to evacuate. We were safe to be with her. She was in one piece when she went into the ground. Parts of her didn't go into the ground, but she, we had that privilege, and just because of the place that we were born. And I think that our faith is probably stronger than someone else who doesn't have that. And the trials that you go through bring that faith in you, I guess. I don't know. Do you have anything to say about that?
No, I think that's it, right? People also say that Allah doesn't, burden souls beyond their capacity. So people that don't go through any of these sort of trials and tribulations, it's also a blessing from Allah, right? Like he doesn't think they are strong enough to go through them, so he shields them from them, right?
It's kind of also reminds me of, in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ was also said that, every kind of pain or trial that you go through it, except that Allah expiates it for something better. And, a lot of people, sometimes they ask me as well, and again, I'm not the most experienced person to be asked, but I happen to be in this role that I'm in. But I try my best to first understand it for myself. And what I think it is that whether you are told that you have a terminal illness, or whether it's something else, you can choose to look at it as, perhaps as something entirely, completely 100% negative. Or you can also, in some cases, I actually had one of our previous guests on, Tahir, who he had cancer. And he also came back with this, and he said that, he saw it as a blessing. And for me, that was quite profound for someone to label something like that as a blessing. But it did even then remind me of that exact hadith, which is that, hey, we in life, we aren't perfect. We all make mistakes. We all have shortcomings. But then again, Allah sometimes provides us with ways to expiate those things and those shortcomings as well. And Allah's mercy also is increased when He sees somebody going through that suffering. And the blessings that come after that are even more further increased as well. So from a Muslim's point of view, they always see these things as opportunities to get expiation, to get Allah's mercy. And this is exactly kind of what you guys are saying. And yeah. Please.
I just also want to touch on like the concept of risk as well. Okay. Our risk is already written. What Allah is going to give us is already written. And so when I think about Zaina and I think about her life and how she was written as somebody's risk, like her heart went to somebody.
Exactly, yeah.
And in order for one thing to happen, the other thing had to happen. And you just like, it is really profound when you think about like one of the person that Zaina saved was a 67-year-old man. And I think in my head how his risk was written from the day he was born, before I was even born, before Zaina was even a thought in our head, but yet our child was his risk, and it's just really like, it's so profound. And that piece of blessing, right? You can be someone else's blessing, and someone can be a blessing for you, whether it's like someone who feeds you when you're hungry, or in Zaina's case, someone who saves your life. Like, I, all I can say is we don't know when our last day is written. Our entry day and our exit day are already written, and it can be
Wow.
tomorrow, it can be in 5 minutes. So you have to live your life with gratitude for everything that you have and everything that is given to you, whether it's
You know,
something, a hardship.
with this conversation today, it's made me realize once again, perhaps I'd forgotten, is that I don't think I'm afraid of death, and I don't think people generally may be afraid of just death. Death without having helped, death without having loved, death without purpose, that's terrifying. That's absolutely terrifying. And when it comes to me or whether my children, that reminds me that every single living day, we have to do something meaningful. We have to do something beyond our selfish motives, whether that's helping someone where we can, putting a smile on someone's face, because when that time comes, it will be these things. And this is exactly what Allah keeps on reminding us about. It will always be these things. Not how long you lived, but what you did in that amount of time.
Yeah. Whether
I
it's
have
a
one.
decade, a day, a
Yeah,
decade,
yeah,
or
exactly.
7 decades.
Exactly. I have one last question for you guys. I think this is a little bit less difficult than the first one, but perhaps I'm wrong. Let's see. Because, let's say that today, I don't know, God sent down an angel from Jannah, with a computer, a laptop or a phone or something like that. And he said, you get to write one email or one video message and you can send it to your daughter. What would you say?
I'll let you go first.
You can
I
think
think
about it.
I think I'd keep it short and sweet. I think I would just write, "We love you. We are good, and we'll see you soon, inshallah."
See you soon, inshallah. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
thanks for making me cry.
sorry about that.
Yeah, I think the same. Yeah, I love you. See you soon.
See you soon. That's something that Muslims would ultimately rely upon, because this is something that we have as faith, and it's something that we hold on to. And I think the world is turning their attention towards Islam
Yeah,
because of not only the strength that people like you show, but the fact that you have this courage and this motivation to carry on, but you're also positive in your mindset as much as you can be humanly possible. And for that, and for you to bring that on today's podcast, I'm really grateful that you've given this perspective, this insight to. I really just hope that a lot of people get to this point where they're still listening, because it has given definitely me a lot of insight and perspective as well. Before we go, I would like to ask you if there's anything else that you'd like to add, you'd like to say.
I think as Muslims, obviously, we're always told to look to the Quran and the example of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So I think for me, what I keep thinking is that, it's just God is the best of planners, right? We had a friend give us bracelets, matching bracelets after Zainab passed away, that just say, leave it to Allah. And that's just, I've tried to adopt that as my mindset in everything now. Like, if there's anything I'm worrying about, it's just, well,
leave it to Allah.
I don't control everything. Just leave it to Allah, and just try
That's
to find
right.
comfort in letting Allah be the driver, right?
Exactly. MashaAllah. I mean, what a mindset to have.
Yeah, I think as humans we want to plan everything, and actually the plan is already there.
That's actually written in the Quran as well. وَمَكَرُوا وَمَكَرَ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. That, people plan, but Allah also has a plan, and actually His plan is better. So I think we'll end it on that, because that is ultimately the mindset. If we can just adopt that one mentality like you have and really live it, that's, I think, the only thing that can keep us going. It's the only thing that can get us through this. And like you said, this life is short. This life is a trial. This life is a journey. You know, we've got to live this life as the Prophet told us to, as a traveler. You know, don't take too much baggage with us. We're only here for a little bit of a time, and the destination is elsewhere. Jazakallah, both of you, Sister Maryam, Brother Nils, for coming on, giving your insight, your knowledge. Allah bless you. May Allah bless those who benefited from your daughter. May your children benefit the rest of the world even more, and that they are able to, just like you guys, show the world that yes, strength can be found if you look in the right places. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah.